Hi, I'm Christopher Allen. I'm joined today with Michael Noble, and we're going to talk a little bit about adaptive learning platforms. For the audience here today, Michael, would you give a little bit of an introduction?
Sure. Thank you, Christopher. Michael Noble. I'm with Area9 Lyceum. I'm the president of our organization here in the Americas region. And, I live and work in Salt Lake City, Utah. I have kind of been in the digital learning space my whole career. So have worked in, custom solutions, off-the-shelf solutions, platforms, various technologies and innovations. What brought me to Area9 Lyceum was just my excitement for innovation in the space of how we use artificial intelligence to optimize that learning experience. So that's a little bit about me. I'm
Yeah,
excited
cool.
to talk to you.
So we're going to talk about adaptive learning platforms, and our industry, I think, has a number of floating and working definitions of what that really means. For the context of our conversation, could you give a short description of what an adaptive learning platform really is?
Yeah, I mean, that word adaptive can be used in lots of different ways to mean lots of different things, right? It's a pretty general term. It's something that adapts to an individual, right, using technology. And I think just because of the way we consume media, when we think adaptive, we think of the algorithms that maybe run like Netflix or something like that, that give us that, oh, this is what you should watch next kind of thing, or Pandora or something. What is the, let's take all that's available and kind of curate that exact content for you. And that curriculum level adaptivity is something that's part of the definition of adaptive. You see that in, usually those algorithms are not quite as complex as the ones that at Area9, when we talk about adaptive learning, we're talking not just about that kind of curriculum level adaptivity, but in the learning experience itself, right? What is the sequence and the kind of how are we going to sequence those learning objectives and those resources to give you that optimal learning experience for you as an individual? If you compare it to like a GPS device with a map, right? It's going to tell you the shortest route. It's going to help you steer around obstacles. It's going to help you accommodate if you take a wrong turn somewhere. It's going to route you back over to the path. And that's very much like an adaptive learning experience. We believe that, that individual kind of tutor experience is a superior learning, and technology can help put us in that zone of proximal development, right? That ideal learning experience, so that we're really learning through practice and not just through content engagement, but a lot of learning through practice.
Yeah, what I'm hearing you describe as the inexperience adaptation is very different than a traditional, kind of rapid author e-learning course, which tends to be pretty linear, and the same experience for all students. So if you've got we're all individuals, and so we come at content and new skills from our own perspective. We're not all the same, but if you think about what makes really boring e-learning, it's content that isn't right for you. And I think of that linear experience as often we assume that all students are novices, right? And they're all starting from the point of they know nothing about this topic. But an adaptive learning platform has a big advantage in that it doesn't have to treat all students the same. And if you have prior experience, it can move you to something that's more challenging for you.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying really is kind of at the heart of it, which is if you look at, and we see the data on all these courses, and usually people know 60 to 80% of the content already. and the 20 to 40% that they don't know, they're actually pretty unaware of what they know and what they don't know. And part of what adaptive does is make it so, oh, yeah, you thought you knew that, but you didn't know that, right? And that becomes critical and just kind of it's a different kind of engagement. We usually talk about engagement as like, oh, it's appealing and I want to spend time on the page. It's, it's something that I want to engage with. And in an adaptive platform, engagement is really about that high quality effort, right? That we're going to ask you to make an effort, but it's going to be we're not going to bore you with stuff you already know. We're going to try and get that out of the way as quickly as possible and really focus on that. And how do we get you to proficiency in the most efficient way?
Right. The other thing that adaptation can help with is if you have a student who's overly confident. They might be competent at that 80% level, but there could be 20% that they're just kind of overly confident in and not competent in. And that can be the death of any performance, right? I know I've got this, all this other stuff is easy. Well, you're getting 80% of it right, but that 20% could be the overall failure of a particular performance or task that you have to do at work. Can you talk about the long-term experience for a student on a platform like this? If we're just working to get them to proficiency at, on 20% of the content or 20% of the skill, what does that experience look like and feel like for the student?
So, like you mentioned, I mean, in the adaptive experience, we're getting you to 100% proficiency. How long is that going to last? Immediately it's going to start dropping off, right? You're going to start forgetting. And because of the artificial intelligence has gathered all this information about you as a learner, it's going to try and queue up for you, short little experiences of refresh right at the moment when you would probably forget it, right? And so that can stay fresh in your memory. And it's also going to know exactly which pieces you struggled with when you were learning before, so that, sometimes it can be like, wow, we have that experience on the web all the time where, oh, it knew I was searching for this over here and it queues that up for me. We knew that you were struggling with this and we're serving it up for you so you don't forget. And over time, right, with that refresh, you can get to, the aim is to get to automaticity, right? Where you're, okay, this is second nature to me. This is muscle memory. I'm not doing deep thinking. Usually in performance on the job, we have to get to that second nature. I mean, you mentioned just how important that 20% can be. One of the use cases we see all the time is if it's a high risk or if it's a safety situation or there's a lot at stake and there's no room for that kind of error. That's a perfect place for adaptive, but it's also perfect for, like, in leadership training where you have a blind spot and you don't really think about the fact that, hey, this is a gap area. I don't really know a lot in there. And you just might work around that for years without a good, tutor.
Right. If we're talking to folks who are moving from a rapid authoring tool to an adaptive platform, there's kind of some general standard low-level statistics or analytics that we get from courses that we deliver. How many students have gone through it? How long did it take? What score did they get? Can you talk about how an adaptive learning platform provides analytics for authors to kind of look at their own content and work? And then beyond just adapting the content to the student, what does the student get to see about their overall progress?
Yeah, so because of how we engineer content in an adaptive environment, we're trying to get to these really small, granular level of content, learning molecules, right? And that's going to give us data at that granular level. So we know, oh, for this granular learning objective with a single activity, a single learning resource associated with a single objective, we know how all the learners are doing on that really granular piece of content, that 1 to 2 minute piece of content, right? So we've got good content analytics to know how the content's doing. We can look at a heat map across the whole learner population to see where are they struggling in which parts of the course. You can monitor the progress of each of the learners at that very granular level. It enables a kind of data-driven approach to the content that we don't usually take. We usually put it up and we're tracking, they completed it or they didn't complete it or they weren't happy with it or whatever. We get to look into how is that content doing its job, right? We can see how long it's taking, right? Because we're measuring in that learner experience, we're measuring how much time are you spending on the learning resource? How much time are you spending on the probes or the activities? How many times are you having to iterate on that? We're looking at the metacognition or the confidence indicators that you're selecting as you go through that process. We're pulling in, oh, of all the learners that have done this, right? What is the right amount of challenge versus, because we could challenge you to the point where you want to give up.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
so hard,
Yep.
right? And hey, here we have to kind of stage it so that it's kind of in this space where I'm challenged and stretched, but I'm not giving up. And all because we have to do that behind the scenes, we can look at the content metrics, we can look at the class metrics, we can look at it at the individual level, and then we can get all the way down to very specific competencies and learning objectives in that analysis.
For the author who's creating content, if they're moving from a rapid authoring tool to a adaptive platform, what's their experience like? Is it faster? Is it harder? Does it take longer? Is there more upfront analysis that's necessary?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because I think there is a perception that, oh, doing that level of design work has to take a lot more time. And that's why I think the design of the tool itself is so important, because it has to, usually with adaptive, we're taking in content that already exists. We use artificial intelligence even to bring it in so that it's easier to work with. We're not doing a lot of copying and pasting. The content's there and imported into the system, and you can really focus on, for the author, it's a lot of the things that we've always wanted to do, which is, oh, I want to do that reverse design from the outcome I want, or from that learning objective, or I really want this nice alignment of activities and learning objectives, which, if we're just thinking about content distribution, we push it, we try to be comprehensive. And this strategy is more about being really laser focused and specific on what's important. So I think it's not different principles, but we're applying them in I would say, almost a more literal way. That instead of that just being guidance, oh, actually, that's the framework we have to use, or the adaptive biological engine that we have that is working doesn't have the pieces it needs, all those little Lego pieces it needs to create something unique.
Sure. I know that you've done a lot of custom content development, kind of outside of adaptive platforms. Do you think a different process is necessary for an instructional strategist or instructional designer moving over to a platform like this in order to be successful?
Yeah, I do think, right, there's always that chicken and egg thing of, the more you know the technology, the more you can design to it and leverage it in the best possible way. And so there's this, it's almost like if you take classroom experiences and then you're moving them digital, right? Digital first design is going to typically be better for the learning experience and for the content. And so I think there is that sense of, I need to, as a learning engineer or author in this situation, knowing exactly what the technology, the affordances of that technology, right? I can design and, exploit, for lack of a better word, those things that are, that it does really, really well. And I think the misperception is, oh, this is for smart drill and practice. People don't think about it for leadership training. This is something where you can practice cognitive skills, or there's, you can elevate questions to the level of troubleshooting and analysis and that kind of thing in an adaptive environment as well. It's just, like all authoring, it's what you put into it, is really going to matter in terms of the results and what that experience is like.
Migrating content. So touched on something earlier in
Yeah.
that the platform can suck in a lot of existing content and give you a good jump start. What does that look like?
So it depends on what content format you're in right now. So if you're in a non-adaptive format, it could be a course format or even a book format, right? Like we could take a digital textbook and make it adaptive by bringing it into a reader that, with highlights on the key points and adaptive kind of probes and challenges as you go through. That's kind of one level of kind of content migration that you might do. The other is, hey, I've got this existing library that's not adaptive. I want to move it into adaptive. We've got bridge tools to bring over all those media assets and everything into adaptive and kind of pre-populate your course structure, right? Because while an adaptive experience is nonlinear, the authoring experience is linear, right? Trying to author in a nonlinear way, it's a bit of a brain teaser of what that would even be like. But it brings that in so that the author's really focused on the, oh, here's the content. It's right here for me. I need to refine this and get it granular and build it out in my framework. But, I think that makes migrating content easier, because I think it is a little intimidating to think about, okay, we have this content that's, and I've done this, so I'm not like casting aspersions on anyone, but it's okay. There's a lot of content. There's some formative, there's, quick checks and a few pieces like that, but it's not the primary strategy. And so usually a lot of the work that's being done is on the formative assessment, because there's simply not a lot there. So that migration work ends up being not a whole lot of new content creation or authoring, but a lot of work on the practice.
Got it. You guys are also working with, firms that have off-the-shelf content, moving from kind of a traditional rapid experience to an adaptive experience. Can you talk a little bit about what that's been like?
Yeah, I think we're really only scratching the surface of what can be done there. We have some awesome partners that we're working with, some premium leadership content through like chart learning. I think the real opportunity is, if you want to experience adaptive, here's something that's ready to go, but the added relevance that you can get by being able to take the content, have scenarios that represent your organization, have, really create an alignment between, hey, this is what this leadership principle means in our context, right? That additional relevance is just going to increase. You talked about that long-term behavior change. That's where I think it creates more, just so much more context.
Sure. And if you're thinking about the adaptive platform helping a student really target in on where their skills have a gap, if it's not contextualized to the work environment that they imagine, the term that they use, the things that are important to make their business run, proprietary stuff, you could be spending a lot of time with a student focused on skill or content, but not have any clue on how to adapt that to their actual work life. And there, I think, is where one of the big promises is, if you can really help, again, close the gap where confidence might be exceeding competence, in some small areas, have that very contextualized to the work problems that they actually need to solve. I think you've got a really winning solution.
Yeah. I mean, I think we undervalue sometimes the fact that a lot of great content exists out there. And if we put the work instead of on, we have to build our own content, but how we're going to help people practice and change, I think that's huge. Like if you take the adaptive, let's say we have an adaptive leadership module, right? Well, in our platform, there's also tools for leveraging on-the-job experience to develop that capability out, right? And bringing those things together, that we have our experiences that help kind of take that and bring it in and apply it. I mean, that's the more holistic approach that, there's only limited budget and attention and resources. And if we put it all in the content, then we don't have enough left over for how we're going to actually integrate it into our organization, or how we're going to give people practice and all the other parts of the solution. And I think off-the-shelf content is a way of accelerating that for the organization, because you've got such a solid base of tested, proven content, and then you can build out that experience that's right for your organization.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining me today. This has been a great conversation. I think there's a lot to learn for folks who have been in, the ID profession for, even a long time, about what some of the newer adaptive platforms can do and how it might help and change the work that they're doing. So thanks again for taking time and chatting with me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Christopher. It's been a pleasure.
You bet. Talk soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.